Can you be gay and Christian at the same time? Is being gay sinful? Is gay sex sinful? If you are gay, are you required by Christianity to practice a life of celibacy, or should you marry someone of the opposite sex and then have joyless sex for the rest of your life? These are all questions that came up at this year's United Methodist Florida Annual Conference, and some big things happened that may change the way we approach human sexuality and gender identity from here on out. And that's what we're talking about this week on the live show.
Kindred UMC live show features adults discussing adult topics, occasionally with adult language. It may not be suitable for young viewers. Please use discretion before watching.
This week's live show is a little different because I am at annual conference. Courtney and Matt, Courtney is our lay delegate to annual conference and Matt is our chair of the Kindred UMC board, are coming up. They're about to be here. And I want to talk about some issues that have come up during this year's annual conference. If you don't know what annual conference is, it's when in the United Methodist Church, we're kind of split up about by state level, but it's not always, sometimes states combine. But we in Florida are the Florida Annual Conference. And one of the issues that came up during the clergy session of the annual conference, we all have to vote on people who are becoming pastors. And we have a whole board of people who have been pastors for a while, who interview, who read extensive amounts of their paperwork, who ask them questions. They have to go undergo psychological assessment, just all kinds of scrutiny. They have to earn a master's degree from a certified theological seminary, all kinds of things that they have to go through. And the board then recommends for ordination or commissioning or licensing, these are different levels of the process, the board recommends candidates for commissioning, and then all of the clergy have to vote to accept them, and it requires a 3/4 majority. So it's not just that we have to have 51% of people agree, but 75% of the people voting have to agree. This year, for the first time in United Methodist history, 2 candidates were submitted for commissioning as what we call elders. Basically, they're going to be pastors of churches. They were submitted, and despite the fact that they were openly gay. And this caused quite a ruckus during the clergy session. Now, I want you to know, before the end of this video, I think it is important that you know where your pastor's theology sits on this issue, and I am going to tell you that, okay? I'm just going to say some things before I tell you that, and I think they matter. So please stay tuned to the end of the video if you're curious about that, but listen to what I have to say before I tell you, okay? There was a contentious back and forth, and ultimately, the entire class of provisional elders, it was maybe like a dozen or more, were not commissioned. They were not allowed to be provisional elders because in the class there were 2 gay people, and that is technically against our book of discipline. Now, the Board of Ordained Ministry put them forward as an act of holy rebellion. They were making a statement about what we believe in the Florida Annual Conference about calling, and specifically in regards to gender identity and sexual identity, and that's that if you're called, you're called. And that's what the Florida Board of Ordained Ministry was essentially saying. However, it did not carry. There were enough people who disagreed with that assessment that voted against the commissioning, and so now those folks are not pastors this year. Here's the scripture I want to read to you today. This is the stuff I want you to know about my theology before I tell you about my personal theology on is being gay a sin, how should gay Christians be. And this comes from the Gospel of Luke. And I apologize, I'm in a hotel, so I hope the lighting is okay and the audio is okay. And I'm reading not from my Bible, but from my phone, which is a perfectly adequate Bible, by the way. So this is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 14, verses 16 through 24. Jesus he's at a dinner party with a leader of the Pharisees. He's been invited to this dinner party with kind of the higher end scholarly lawmakers of the day. And somebody asks him in the middle of the dinner party, it starts to bring up this issue. And then this is how Jesus answers this person. Then Jesus said to him, "Someone gave a great dinner and invited many. At the time of the dinner, he sent his slave to say to those who had been invited, 'Come, for everything is ready.' But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said to him, 'I've bought a piece of land and I must go and see it. Please accept my regrets.' Another said, 'I've bought 5 yoke of oxen and I'm going to try them out. Please accept my regrets.' Another said, 'I have just been married and therefore I cannot come.'" Now, I would say consummation of marriage is quite important, but that's a sex joke. Verse 21. So the slave returned and reported to his master. Then the owner of the house became angry and said to his slave, "Go out at once into the streets and lanes of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." And the slave said, "Sir, what you ordered has been done, and there is still room." And then the master said to the slave, "Go out into the roads and lanes and compel people to come in, so that my house may be filled." Here's my theology before I tell you my theology. When I talk about homosexuality, there's going to be some of you who really agree with me. And there's going to be some of you who really disagree with me. And there's going to be some of you who really don't care and don't have a dog in the race. Whether or not you agree with me, whether or not you care about this issue, I want you to know that you are welcome. If we know anything about Jesus, it's that he creates an image of the kingdom of heaven and teaches this kingdom of heaven that has a place for everyone. And I mean everyone. We do not have to agree with each other to love each other. We do not have to agree with each other to be invited to accept the grace of the Eucharist, to the grace of death and resurrection, this miracle that unites us, or at least has the potential to unite us if we would just accept it and lean into it. And regardless of your position on any specific issue, if you will participate in our community in a way that is in good faith and doing your best not to cause harm and really trying to be a part of who we are, then I don't care what you think about anything. You are welcomed, you are loved, you are worthy, you are a recipient of God's grace, you are a beloved holder of the image of God. And I think we have lost the thread on that. We have become tribal, and we have gone off into different camps on all these specific issues, and no person lines up perfectly with any set of pre-organized social beliefs about anything. And we have just lost the ability to love each other in disagreement and to even ask questions and leave the potential out there for our minds and our hearts to be changed by a new story or a new piece of information or a new experience of life, a new perspective. We've just abandoned it. And I cannot take it. I grieve the loss of it. So whether or not you agree with me, please hear the most important part of my calling and my role as pastor is that all are welcomed. All are welcomed. Now, I told you where I land. Here's what I think about homosexuality. I think, one, I do not believe it's sinful. I believe it's a natural expression. If you go back into the Old Testament and read sections where it talks about man lying with man is sinful, I think that speaks more to aspects of worship and pagan worship. There were aspects of pagan worship that involved some pretty heinous sex acts, pedophilia, rape, incest, things that we can by and large agree are unhealthy and should not be practiced. And if you disagree with that, well, then we can talk about it. But I got some pretty strong arguments against you. But they associated historically in that time and in that culture, they associated homosexuality with all of those other pagan sexual practices that were abusive. And so just by a trick of the mind, they were, hey, this is not a natural thing, and so therefore it is sinful. We have evolved, we have learned, we know much more about human sexuality now, simply from a psychological and scientific basis. And that's why I have absolutely no problem with someone being gay and Christian, someone being bi and Christian, someone being trans and Christian. We now understand that these are things that happen to people. Just like being straight happened to me. I never made a choice that I like girls. I just liked girls. I never made a choice that I'm a man. I just have always felt like a man. And so I never made that choice. It happened to me. And it is equally possible and equally acceptable that that type of thing happens to other people in a different way, and there is nothing wrong or sinful with that. Now, if you're sitting there cheering because you agree with me, well, fine, it's fine to celebrate. But please know that that does not make me love you more. It doesn't make me love you less. It doesn't make me love you more. I am called to love you. And I do my best to practice that. And if you're sitting there going, I don't like what he said, I want you to know, it doesn't make me love you more or less. I'm called to love you, and you are welcomed. You are invited to have a place at this table in this Eucharist. So, with that, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.